continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560 The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Again, George Washington law professor Jonathan Turley on with Brett Baer last evening, right after the announcement came, the report came that Trump had been indicted by Alvin Bragg's grand jury in Manhattan. This is what Turley had to say about it, and obviously the precedent-setting nature of it, but also the implications of said precedent.
It is a big moment, and it's a chilling moment. The fact is that over months of investigation, we have not heard of other crimes. This is the crime that most people on both the right and the left have been debating. It's the crime that's referenced in a book written by one of the prosecutors who resigned, then published a book about prosecuting Trump. And the concern is that if this theory is actually the basis of the indictment, then this is a rather ignoble moment in history. Donald Trump may be the first former president to be indicted, but if this is the standard, he won't be the last.
And just make sure you caught it. Ignoble moment, not noble moment. Ignoble moment in American history. And so don't be fooled, not that our listeners would be, by the blaring headlines of Trump to be indicted on 30 counts of business fraud. It all relates to what we've been talking about all morning and for the last couple of weeks and for the last several years when this case has been invoked and these transactions and these players have been invoked. There may be lesser included charges, but the centrality of the legal theory has not changed. There's no indication it has, and we'll see if there's any surprises once this indictment is unsealed next week. For more on the topic, pleased to be joined by George Parry, former federal and state prosecutor out Pennsylvania way, regular contributor to the American Spectator, and he blogs at knowledgeisgood.net. George Parry, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Glad to be with you.
Well, we talked to you last week, and as we both anticipated, not knowing exactly when it would happen, but Alvin Bragg was too far out over his skis not to try to land with an indictment, and he did. So your reaction and anything that is insinuated or reported that comes as a surprise to you here?
Nothing comes as a surprise. I still don't understand the legal theory underlying the charges. I'm not quite sure what the charges are going to be. But if the case is built around these payments to Stormy Daniels, then I think he's got a very, very flimsy case. Actually, he has no case at all. But the damage has been done, and Bragg will go on to have a secure political future in New York. He could be district attorney for life, mayor, governor, who knows where it could end. But the bottom line is this is a very sad day for the United States of America. Trump is the first president to ever face former president to ever face criminal charges. And it's clearly a nakedly political move by this DA to influence the outcome of the upcoming presidential election. So we've crossed the Rubicon. It isn't going to end here. And it's just a sad day.
But if they got him on this charge, what does it mean for the other criminal probes? Election interference in Georgia, and then the January 6th for Washington, D.C., and the special counsel there.
Well, all of those cases, I consider those cases to be almost as ridiculous as what Bragg has done. I mean, the basis for the Georgia investigation, you've got another Soros-type DA in Fulton County, where I was born and raised, And she's saying that, well, Trump called the election officials in Georgia and complained about the election. Therefore, he was interfering in the election. I don't know how a candidate can be accused of interfering in his own election, but that seems to be the theory of her case. And as for the
just to stop there for a second. Just stop. I mean, a candidate could be accused of interfering in an election where he's a candidate if he was committing some sort of election fraud, but not by complaining to the authorities about how they've administered the election, which is all that Trump did, which is why that's such a flimsy case.
Yeah, I mean, what Trump said in the phone call is, I need to find another 10,000 votes or whatever. He didn't say, I want you to manufacture 10,000 votes. I want you to do anything illegal. He just said, one of Trump's problems is you're never quite sure what his syntax is aiming at. The way he expresses himself, sometimes your eyeballs kind of cross. But what he said was, I need to find another 10,000 votes. Well, that's a statement of fact. If he can find another 10,000 votes, then he wins. That is not an invitation to commit a crime. That is not undue influence on the Secretary of State of the state of Georgia.
And there's all sorts there's all sorts of additional context and election lawyers on that call, like Cleta Mitchell, and they talk about specific buckets of votes they would want recounted. I mean, that's a ridiculous case. There may be some danger in the Mar-a-Lago case, the classified documents case, not necessarily on classified documents, but on statements that were less than truthful, or the obstruction of justice charges, which is more wheelhouse for the feds. But before we get to that, just to go back to Manhattan.
Yeah.
If you're Trump's defense attorney, you're going to make a motion to dismiss these charges, right? And the basis of that motion would be what? What are the arguments you would make?
Well, first of all, the charges and again, I have to assume that we know what this is about.
Right.
I don't understand how a local prosecutor winds up bringing criminal charges on the basis of federal election law. I mean, he's trying to grasp something together here that says, well, there were falsified documents, which is a misdemeanor under New York law, and how somehow or other that translates into a felony because it pertained to trying to change the outcome or bring about a particular outcome under federal election law. Look, I got to tell you, I don't have a degree in psychiatry. All I have is a law degree, and I can't figure out what Bragg is supposedly driving at here. Because it makes no legal sense whatsoever.
Because no intent to defraud.
Well, we don't know what the intent was, what evidence they have to intent, but with respect to intent. But the issue here is, so he's a local prosecutor, so he's charged with enforcing state laws, and he is implicating a federal law. He has no jurisdiction there, but he's not prosecuting under a federal statute. He's prosecuting under state statute. But then, so if the federal authorities have passed on it, if the FEC has offered no opinion, although former FEC commissioners have said even the facts taken as argued against Trump would not constitute an FEC violation. But he's got nothing to reference at the federal level that would support that it was intent to defraud the FEC, because federal prosecutors and FEC officials have passed on it.
Well, look, there are a couple of arguments here. Number one is, let's assume, money was paid to Stormy Daniels. Number one, was it Trump's money? Was it campaign money? Number two, what was the purpose of paying off Stormy? Was it to preserve his marriage, or was it to affect the outcome of the election? You got that whole argument there. But then there's something even more fundamental. The statute of limitations for a misdemeanor under New York law
2 years.
Is 2 years. And for a felony, it's 5 years. I don't know how they get past any of that. We're talking about stuff that happened prior to the 2020 election.
Well, if he charges as a felony, the theory is the clock starts when the falsified business record is entered, and so I assume he would argue, well, it was entered when when the Trump organization filed its 2018 tax returns for the 2017 tax year, and maybe they have until April 15th or some date whenever those taxes were filed to be within their 5-year window. I mean, maybe it's just conjecture.
Yeah, well, good luck with that.
Well, I know, but I mean,
look, one of the problems we've got here is we really don't know what these charges are.
Well, I understand, but we have a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
And but to your point, I mean, going back as a defense attorney, but you're a former prosecutor, but you obviously understand both sides. One of the basis of a motion to dismiss would be the statute is run, right? You'd at least make the argument.
Is run. Number two, there is no legal basis. Even if the state could prove every element of what they are alleging, they have not made out a crime. Therefore, the indictment is defective and must be dismissed. And that would be the first round of defense. Let's assume Trump is going to wind up in front of some Manhattan judge where he has virtually no chance of prevailing on a motion to dismiss.
Right.
Well, then you get down to going to trial. And I think if he's tried in Manhattan, he's a cooked goose, and then he has to look to an appeal before, the New York Appellate Division, which is more broadly based than what's going on right there in Manhattan. But he's got some severe problems as a criminal defendant in New York courts.
I mean, that trial, if it does go to trial, that is going to be a clown show, because you'll have Michael Cohen testifying, Stormy Daniels, David Pecker from the National Enquirer. I mean, do you think anybody wants to be part of that or even see that? It's going to be embarrassing.
Right. Surprise witness, maybe Bobo the Clown.
National Enquirer would love it. Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, no, I mean, look, the thing is let's assume Trump gets convicted. What does that mean? Right. Well, it won't disqualify him from running for president.
It'll also immediately
the United States Constitution, he can appeal it, and even if he was convicted, Article 2 of the Constitution only has 2 requirements to be president. One is you got to be a native-born American, and number 2, you got to be more than 35 years or older. Period. It says nothing about convicted felons or anything. So,
yeah, and if Biden can run from his basement, Trump can run from a Manhattan jail cell. So that'll be fun.
Exactly.
I got another question for you, though, a legal one. So all this, the talk, which is legitimate, and I agree with it, but the talk of this is politics, not prosecutorial discretion. This is a political prosecution. It was telegraphed by this district attorney when he ran for office. Is that grounds for a motion to dismiss that this is prosecutorial misconduct? And if you can even make that argument credibly, I mean, have you ever seen an argument based on politics over the law actually result in a case like this being dismissed?
I've never seen it. I've never seen it. I've been involved in a lot of high-profile cases on both sides, both as a prosecutor and defense counsel. I've just never seen that happening. I mean, prosecutorial misconduct gets thrown around all the time.
Right.
And while this may be an ill-founded case, this may be an outrageous political move, so forth and so on, it doesn't really qualify as prosecutorial misconduct. And I hear these talking heads on television talking about grand jury secrecy, which is absurd under this situation because the fact of the matter is there hasn't been a leak out of this grand jury. We just know that something is coming. But even if grand jury secrecy was violated, there are sanctions for that, but those sanctions don't go to dismissing an indictment.
Well, but look in the Georgia case. I mean, the grand juror, she went and spoke and did a whole media tour.
Yeah, but the judge found that to be not violative of the strictures. The point is to say, the point is this though. Because what the problem is, so many people are ignorant of the law and just about everything else, and we have all these cross currents where people are making legal arguments that are political ones, and people are making political arguments that are that are legal.
Right.
One, legal and political and legal, and they're conflating the two.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, and I agree. And I mean, look, the problem the problem I have as a lawyer is until I've seen the charges, I really can't offer any kind of opinion. I mean, I admire Alan Dershowitz and Professor Turley for coming on and saying, if this is the case, if these are the charges, this is ridiculous. I get all that, but we just don't know. We don't know what they've got and what the charges are, and we're just going to have to wait until that comes out in the open. Then I might be able to comment knowledgeably, or at least with half as much confidence as Dershowitz has in everything he says.
Well, gentlemen, the good news is this morning we're learning from Governor DeSantis that he's not going to assist in extraditing Trump back to New York.
Yeah, well, that's not a non-issue because Trump's going to turn.
He's going to turn.
in.
Yeah, and they're working.
But I mean,
so. What does Tuesday look like?
Yeah, well, look, as for DeSantis, I just came up from Florida, driving through the back roads of Florida. The Trump banners are still up. Mm-hmm. So if DeSantis knows what's good for him, he's gonna just take care of Trump and not cooperate in this effort. So
yeah, the Trump flotillas are going to make their way up the Atlantic from Florida to New York.
Go in the harbor in the Hudson. Oh, yeah, Hudson River. Yes.
George Parry, former federal and state prosecutor, contributor to the American Spectator. He blogs at knowledgeisgood.net. George, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure to be with you guys.
Yes, thank you so much. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's what Chicago is talking about. It's Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy on AM 560. The Answer.
Hello, friends, and welcome to what has become a